The Romans fought like lions in battle, but they needed to rest safely at night, and that's why they built marching camps. Know everything about them here and now. We all know, or at least those of us who like the history of Rome, that the legions built marching camps at nightfall so that they could not be caught by surprise by the enemy while they were on a campaign. Well, in today's video we are going to learn about these camps. We will see where they were installed, how they were designed, what defenses they had and what they were used for, cause yes, they were not only used to spend the night. I want to tell you that it has been quite difficult to find information about the marching camps, because most of the information I found was about the castra estativa, which are the permanent camps made of stone, and some pages that talked or pretended to talk about the marching camps mixed both. So if you like the work I have done, I ask you to give it a like, now more than ever, and subscribe to the channel to join the Hispanic Guard. It really helps a lot. And while we're at it, I leave you in the description the link to my Discord server. Let's start by finding out where these marching camps were installed. The ideal is to set up the camp on high ground so that you have a wider range of vision, and of course this range of vision should be clear. By clean I mean that there were no forests nearby, or mountains, or any kind of geographical feature that could hide the enemy army, so that if the army approaches, the Romans could see it and be prepared for its arrival. Another important point is the supply of water and food, mainly water, as food is much easier to transport if you have to go get it from a distant place. In addition to that, food was also transported on the legion's mules. The water had to be from a river or something. That ensures potable water. It couldn't be poisoned or diverted by the enemy. For example, if it's a small stream, the enemy could divert its course if they lay siege to the camp, which would eliminate the water supply. Additionally, if it was known that the enemy was nearby, the camp should be set up a minimum of 4 kilometers away from the enemy forces. Who found this ideal place for the camp? Well, this was the task of the explorers, whom you can meet by clicking on the link shown at the top of the screen. Once the point where the camp was established to be set up, the engineers, escorted by an infantry detachment, would move ahead to start designing the camp. 4 large flags were placed marking the 4 corners of the camp, and then the location of the doors was indicated. The interior of the future camp was then leveled and cleared of vegetation. Next, the point where the commander's tent would go was established, and a red flag indicated the point where the nearest water supply was located. It was also indicated where the streets that would connect the interior of the camp would run. The main streets, Praetoria, Decumana, and Quintana. Then we have the Sagularis Road that runs along the interior perimeter of the camp. The main ones are the Principalis, Praetoria, and Decumana, as they connect the 4 gates of the camp. These are the Porta Praetoria, Porta Decumana, Porta Principalis Sinistra, and Porta Principalis Dextra. These gates were supposed to be between 12 and 15 meters wide so that the troops could cross them without problems. Next to the gates there was material so that in case of an attack on the gates these could be blocked. These camps did not have doors like a castle might have. That is, there was a gap in the wall, but there was nothing that opened and closed. That's why an attack should be repelled with a Roman shield wall or by blocking the passage with obstacles. When the main body of the army arrived, the camp design was finished, so it was time to start construction work. A detachment from each legion stood guard, while the rest took out their shovels and picks and began work. They were allowed to leave their shield and backpack, but they had to keep their armor and sword. First of all, trenches were dug, which were 1.5 meters deep and 1 meter wide, although this could be widened if the enemy army was considerably large. The earth they extracted was not wasted but was used to build the ager, which is an embankment or ramp that is built next to the trench, at a minimum of 18 meters from the nearest tents. This embankment was 2.4 meters wide and 1.8 meters high. A continuous ramp was made on the inner part of the embankment. so that the legionnaires could climb it without problem, while on the outside this ramp was much steeper so that the enemy would have a hard time if they tried to climb it. With the embankment or aguerre built, it was time to raise the palisade or vallum using the poles that the legionnaires carried with them, although it should be said that the sources differ a bit on the matter of the legionnaires carrying the poles. Is it agreed that they carried poles? Yes. The question is whether these poles were enough to build the entire palisade, or if they always had cut down trees nearby to finish setting it up. This last hypothesis is based on the idea that the transported poles were like a kind of supplement or reserve, in case there were not enough trees at the campsite to build the palisade. Anyway, if for some reason they needed more material, they could cut down nearby trees, which would also expand their field of vision. In front of the doors, since there was only a gap, the titulum was built, which was a short palisade that prevented the enemy from charging directly at the gap. Now the enemy forces would have to attack diagonally, being able to exert less pressure on the shield wall defending the door. The space between the palisade and the tents was known as the intervallum, and the via sagularis that we mentioned before ran through here. This space allowed the tents and the legionaries in them to be more difficult to reach if the enemy started firing projectiles over the palisades. This area was used to house livestock. Once the defenses were built, all the tents were erected. First the commander's tent, and then those of the rest of the legion. However, if there was a storm, the tents were set up before the defenses. The total time needed to build the camp was between 3 and 5 hours, depending on whether there were enemies lurking, in which case there would have to be a larger than usual part of the army on guard. Once the camp was finished, the guards were decided. A guard was placed every 10 meters on average, and this lasted about 3 hours. When the time was up, a trumpet announced the change of guard. And what happened if a legionnaire fell asleep during a guard shift? Well, he was punished, although the type of punishment depended on... I already covered this topic in my previous video about the punishments of the Roman legions, so I won't repeat myself here. If you want to know about the punishments of the Roman legions and what happened to the soldiers who fell asleep during the guards, do click on the link that is shown at the top of the screen, and you can take the opportunity to subscribe if you are not yet part of the Hispanic Guard. Let's proceed. The camp is already set up and the legionnaires have already spent the night. Well, what's happening with the camp? Let's see. When the sun rose, a trumpet sounded and the guards informed the officers of what had happened and what they had seen during the night. Then, a group of riders was sent to explore the surroundings of the camp and find out what the enemy was doing, and if they were in the vicinity. Meanwhile, the legionnaires had breakfast and began to pack up their tents and all their belongings. The riders returned and reported to the commander what they had seen. Based on that, the strategy that the legion would follow was drawn up, and if it was decided that they would leave from there, a second trumpet sound was heard, a signal that the legionnaires should load everything onto the pack mules and be ready to leave the place. With the third trumpet sound, the army began to march towards its new destination. Was the camp dismantled? It's something that I've had a hard time finding, and I haven't gotten a consensus answer, so as always I present my opinion and invite you to leave in the comments if you got it right or have a different theory. The doubt mainly surrounds the palisades and the towers, if these were erected, and it's whether they were dismantled or simply took the poles that the legionnaires had brought with them, leaving the rest in place. I believe it was like that. They would remove the poles that the legionnaires would carry and leave the rest where they were. It is known for certain that the pits were not filled in due to the archaeological remains that have been found over the years. Over time, these partially dismantled forts could give rise to settlements that would eventually grow in size to become true cities. And with that, today's video ends. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss any videos.